Good afternoon. My name is Cameron Long, and this is my presentation on the educational thinker Lev Vygotsky for Liberty University, Education 504. So I want to apologize for my voice. I'm a little bit under the weather. I'm going to do the best I can. Hopefully you guys can be able to understand me. I'll speak as clearly and concise as I can. So Lev Vygotsky was born in Russia in 1896 and is a world-renowned theorist and psychologist who developed many ideas and theories of education which have altered the field of modern education and particularly early childhood education. Despite his short life and lifelong illnesses, Vygotsky was a prolific writer who put forward many ideas radical for his time. Many of his ideas gained popularity in the West during the late 70s and 80s and are still used in modern education classrooms, including my own. Vygotsky placed heavy emphasis on the role of society in development and believed that true learning was not rote memorization or drilling like a lot of traditional curriculums or schools, particularly in his own time, but true learning was rather an active interaction between learners and society. He believed that learning was a dynamic, that students learn best through hands-on interaction, cause and effect, learning through experimentation, things like that. He also believed that language was potentially the most vital part of a child's development, and that it allowed children to grow more quickly being exposed to vibrant language and being allowed the opportunity to try to speak themselves. He believed that language begins externally. As a child develops more knowledge, they begin to internalize their language and think inside their head. For example, a young child would see a toy and say out loud what it is, whereas the child gets older and gains more knowledge, they wouldn't feel the need to say that out loud. They would just immediately know inside their mind. Some of Vygotsky's most lasting and popular theories include his ideas of the zone of proximal development, scaffolding, and the more knowledgeable other. So the zone of proximal knowledge is his idea that students for basically any task fall into one of three areas: tasks they can complete by themselves, tasks they need help with, and tasks that are beyond their reach. He believed that through the use of scaffolding, one of his other famous ideas, which was use of many examples and formulas that we could use to help a child progress. You could use technology, you could use the more knowledgeable other. So there's many different ways for a child to move out of their current zone into a different one. He also believed in the more knowledgeable other, which is an example. It could be a parent, a teacher, or even a more advanced peer in the classroom. He believed that placing a more advanced peer with some of the ones who were struggling a little bit would allow for some peer learning and would allow learning to grow in the classroom. He also believed that play was incredibly important. He believed that children learn, even though it doesn't seem like they're learning during playtime. He said the brain is incredibly active and they are just in a constant state of learning. So, although Vygotsky was a brilliant and radical thinker, his ideas are not without some criticisms. So, some of the criticisms I found was that the zone of proximal development is broad and vague, especially on the role of the teacher and moving through the zones. There's also too much focus on cooperation. Some students, although cooperation is great in the classroom and especially helps with moving on to the real world and communication, some students work best independently, and especially when you allow them to come to the answers themselves. I know me personally as a learner, I kind of learn best not working in a group, but rather finding answers personally. Another one I found was that the more knowledgeable other, the peer teaching, places a little too much pressure on the young students. They should be focused on their own education rather than have like the super important task of teaching their peers. So those are some of the criticisms that I found. But even with these criticisms and others, Vygotsky's importance to the world of early childhood education cannot be understated. Despite being born over 100 years ago, his ideas are still practical and used in many classrooms, including my own. I want to thank you for joining me, and I hope I was able to give a brief explanation of one of my favorite educational philosophers, Lev Vygotsky. As I leave you, I will end with one of my favorite quotes that explains a lot about his ideas and my own personal philosophy of education. And that quote is, "It is through others that we become ourselves." Thank you and have a great day.